What's up guys, Joe with Tradger Farms. I'm a habitat specialist with Whitetail Habitat Solutions alongside Jeff Sturgis and the gang. Hope everyone's doing well. Back out on the farm, finally. It's been 2 to 3 weeks probably, so haven't posted in a little bit, I apologize. Wanted to give you a quick update on some things, touch on some topics that might help either now or going back into next year, alleviate some of that stress hopefully. For me and my stressor, this is a new plot I've showed you guys a couple times where it was switchgrass, and you can see I did miss spraying there in the middle a little bit, and some of these edges definitely still have some grasses coming up, so I did not expect the buckwheat here to be luscious. We're going to show you a luscious one over here shortly, but at the same time we do have some buckwheat. We're adding some organic matter and greens, and you know, it's still going to be great. Plus spraying and disking and working this grass in a little bit has certainly helped, and it's going to give me a good kind of jump start when I come in to plant my fall food here in a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks really. Again, we'll be planting our fall food, so that's exciting. So just a quick caveat for those that might end up maybe in the future. You know, I'm always talking about planting a little more switch the first time than you guys want, and the reason for that is you can always kill it later. But also, you know, you just go through all those steps that we talk about, and I've posted a couple videos. Jeff has many videos, obviously, when it comes to putting our switch in, and who wants to keep redoing all of those steps? Once those steps are done, you have that perennial, and that's why switchgrass has become such a buzzword in the community here. So one thing I would just stress, you know, with this, guys, some have equipment, some don't, but once switchgrass is there though for, you know, a couple of years and on, it is a deep root grower, and I think that's part of the reason why a lot of this switch was a little bit of a struggle to kill. Sometimes when I sprayed it as well, it was also fairly tall. I have a little bit of an issue with moisture, so getting equipment and some things back here can be a problem. So you can either do numerous sprayings and really kind of get that good kill, or I want you guys to mow it down, wait a few weeks, come back in and spray it real good, and it will kill a little bit easier when it's younger, but it still needs that surface area of the leaves and the foliage to soak in that herbicide. So don't just cut things with a mower and then come in and spray right away. It's not going to work good. Anyway, so that is, you know, part of the reason. And I think, you know, even in previous videos this year, I talked a little bit about, you know, the thatch layers. I did some mowing late winter to alleviate, you know, the risk of fawns and just kind of lessen some of that thatches around. That is not, you know, required. It's not anything that you need to do to get your new switch coming back the next year. It's just something that I wanted to do. And with that being said though, you know, regardless, the switch still has that deep root, so it was still tougher than I originally anticipated to kill. But not a big deal. So it's fairly young. We just got like an inch or two of rain in the last week or so here in southeastern Michigan. So I'm gonna let this probably go a little bit more until I can get the mower back here. I'll mow it down, wait a couple weeks, and then I'm gonna spray it even with the buckwheat and go from there. Now, rolling and kind of switching this topic over to the buckwheat, guys. This is a big thing that I like to talk about with clients, and if you go back, or you notice it this year, but like for sure last year, people would talk about their buckwheat, or then maybe they try and do this, you know, quote, you know, somewhat no-till system with no equipment, you know, broadcasting into the buckwheat, if you will, right? It's something that Jeff talks about a lot. If you have a super weak stand of buckwheat, whether it's grasses or other weeds filling in with the buckwheat doesn't get super tall. Now, this isn't at its full maturity. Neither is that, but that's a good stand. I'll show you here in a second. All sorts of stuff is going to fill in with this. So if you simply try to just roll it over, you're not going to get a good kill. And we do recommend spraying with glyphosate after you do that. But the issue is if you have some glyphosate resistant weeds, you're not going to be able to kill all the weeds. Then you put your fall food in, and a lot of you guys I see kind of complaining on just random Facebook, you know, social media forums and whatnot, pages about how it didn't come in very well. Well, that's why. It's really, you know, a compounding effect. If you have some weeds, it's going to be even worse, or a lot of weeds, it's really going to affect the food. You're not going to have, you know, 20% weeds, 80% food plot. It's going to really start degrading from there. You're going to have, you know, 60-70% weeds and barely any food. It gets pretty bad, so don't be surprised. You really got to do a good job. Even if you need to push your planting back a week or two, spray very well, and then come in and and pretty much get to bare soil if you have to. Scratch the buckwheat, you know, if you didn't have that good growth, you didn't get that nice stocky stem, you didn't get that green mulch, you know, thatch layer when you kill it for those seeds. If you can't amend the soil and get to that point, then just get to bare dirt, put your seeds down, especially those small seeds like clover and brassica, and restart. You can still have a great plot going into the fall. I did that my very first year when I struggled, and I had brassica still 3 feet tall and so on, even in a drought for a couple weeks. So now we're gonna head over to this other side. Hopefully a nice scrape here come hunting season. This is what I like to see when people plant their buckwheat. This is a good stand. I will try and put the date up on the screen. I don't know it off the top of my head, but if we really, we're in mid-July right now, so it's gonna be a few weeks. You know, we're probably 5-ish weeks into this buckwheat stand. It's looking good, almost worrisome good. What we'll often tell clients is, you know, for the buckwheat growing system, I like to work backwards, meaning if our planting is, let's say, early August, 8 weeks prior to early June is usually a good amount of time. We don't want to go much more than that, or you could get a ton of voluntary seed, you know, at places when, you know, a little bit of buckwheat in the fall plot is okay, but we don't want it really taking over a bunch of other stuff that we're planting. If your soil is really good, that could potentially be lowered to maybe 6 weeks or so. So just kind of bear that in mind. Now, I redid my soil samples. I don't know why I haven't finished my soil sample video. I apologize. I will get that out at some point. It's just because it was in a multi-stage video. But if your soil is good, you guys are doing your amendments and how I want to see your buckwheat and the success that you have on your property, I want it to look like this. And the reason for that is this is just awesome. Look at the ground. There's barely anything in there. A couple little clover, you know, a weed or two here and there. It's cool down there. It's like next to bare dirt and just this luscious organic matter on top that we're gonna put back into the soil. So with that being said, someone that did the work and got to this and wants to use that buckwheat system, or maybe doesn't have the equipment to do a different system of planting, perfectly fine. We just kind of really want to strive to get to this point. Even if you're hand carrying those lime bags, doing what you need to do, we got to get to this point, because now that the weeds are smothered, we can simply walk through, or, you know, I don't condone standing on an ATV or anything while it's moving, but whatever you guys can kind of figure out safely to seed into your standing buckwheat and really get a good distribution. Meaning if I walk through and the buckwheat's 6 feet tall, it's going to be hitting the buckwheat and the seed might not spread very well. So just kind of bear that in mind. But a good spread in all of this, and then you can take your easy roller, cultipack, or whatever, push all this buckwheat down over the seed. And it's when it looks like this, you guys, you're gonna see that the thatch layer, you're almost like, Joe, are you sure that the buckwheat's gonna grow through this? It's gonna be like so thick and matted, but it will start to die off. All the moisture in the buckwheat stem, which is really great, is gonna help, and it will come through. So it works very well. I would say, in addition, to try and spray over with glyphosate just one more time, because when you guys are using rollers or stuff you made at home, that's all fine and dandy, but we're not using typically professional crimpers, which have all these blades, and it's meant to break up the plant, or, you know, crimp it, if you will, in numerous places to stop that flow of nutrients and all that good stuff, and make sure it dies. When we roll it, we're not for sure making it, you know, die. We hope we crimped it in one place, and in a good stand, it's going to be much easier to kill with just a roller. But just in case it starts springing back up, it would shade out your food plot if you did not get a good kill. So a simple little spraying of glyphosate. You can even do it while you roll over your buckwheat, you know, and do it at the same time. Sometimes that bothers me. I don't know why. I just have to do it separately, or I get confused on where I sprayed because the spray is wider than the cultipacker. But anyway, get them both done, and then you guys have all the benefits of doing this no-till system, and you don't need a lot of equipment. It's just getting to this point. So I think that this is a great difference between what you just saw and competing things, whether it's switchgrass or weeds. And then on this side where I redid my soil test, I was very close to neutral. I might have been even actually a touch above 7, I want to say, for this plot. I'll take a look. But it's not going to look much better than that. So very pleased to see, and the lime that I did, you know, last year really help, even though this is the first time doing buckwheat in here. But I hope it helps you guys. I hope that you're not stressed when you're doing your own buckwheat planting. If it doesn't come out perfect, that you have the steps, you know, to add that lime, do the soil sample and such, and amend the soil and get to that point so that your plots will be much better coming this fall when you're out hunting. We're kind of in the back bedding area. I left the ATV running because I had kicked a deer, a younger buck, and I had a bigger one actually on camera with him at like 11 a.m. Not too far from here. But this camera, I think even with the solar, is dead. So it must, the batteries just slowly drain and the solar can't keep up. So I'm gonna swap them out. But wanted to show you, actually you can still see bits of switch in with this buckwheat, but definitely looks, you know, better than that one area. So working, doing okay. But it's just, you know, interesting how the different stages of buckwheat smother better and ultimately have a better result when it comes to your food plot. We got cobs, baby. On most of these, which is awesome. We're out here this weekend getting our buckwheat smashed. Wanted to give you a little look at what it looks like with a nice green mulch layer. This is kind of what we're going for if you guys are going to be doing that, you know, buckwheat quote unquote no-till system, where you can seed into the buckwheat, crush this over, and then get germination coming right through the buckwheat. Almost seems impossible with the nice green thatch layer that you get, but it does. It works well. It actually dies pretty quick. I want to show you the kind of stockiness of the buckwheat and the moisture that it has in here. Of course, there's some dew mixed in with this, but my pants are totally sopping wet. But it works very well. You guys can do that. You can seed into it. You don't really need to work the soil if you don't want to. Look how tall this stuff is. I'm 6'2". I mean, some of this buckwheat is literally like 6'5", 6'6". So pretty crazy. It is taking a little while with my smaller cultipacker. Would love one day to either get something for the tractor or maybe even drag like a 4x4 or a 6x6. If any of you guys have tried that, please let me know in the comments below. I think it would do probably just as good, because remember, this is not a professional crimper. It's a cultipacker, but we are kind of, you know, attempting to crimp this buckwheat in one spot where we break it, even though a real crimper, you know, is going to break up that plant so that it can't flow, you know, nutrients up and down the stem, ultimately killing it. And that is why we're going to spray glyphosate over this. Now, with this good stand, I definitely could have done the no-till, but it is worth mentioning that it would be very hard to walk through with this buckwheat being this tall. So you do kind of want to time it in the 6 to 8 week mark. Poorer soil, you're going to be more towards 8 weeks. And better soil, which this plot is pretty dang good. It's close to neutral and did some amendments. And you can see that probably could have done a little bit less and seeded into it. So because of that reason, I'm going to use my tractor. I'm going to spray this with glyphosate and 2,4-D, and then I'm going to wait a week or two, and I'm going to come back and start getting my fall food in, because we're in the beginning of August here next week. Some of you might be wondering, you know, well, Joe, why are you going to spray 2,4-D? And the reason for that is because not all of my areas look quite like this. And if you start to get some of these other weeds, mare's tail, etc., that are glyphosate resistant, it's important that we kill those off, depending on the equipment that you have, right? Or even if you do have equipment, kill everything. The buckwheat will die pretty easily with glyphosate. We'll get the rest of that killed though regardless. 2,4-D has that residual 1 to 2 weeks. And then as all of this is dead, it'll be good to come, and I can just lightly mix in any of this organic matter back into the soil. And then I'll be off and running planting with the seeder again that my good neighbor buddy Dwayne has, and get that kind of knocked out. It'll be super exciting. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that. I know the last video was on buckwheat. The rest of today pretty much will be spraying and maybe working on some blinds. And at the shed, we've been getting the barn some culverts in, and there's still starlings attacking me and all kinds of good stuff to do. Look at the residue on this buckwheat. Just sopped already. Got a lot more to do, hopefully before the wind picks up, so we'll get going.